Our carrot crop is coming along just fine, but there are about 6 weeks left before harvest, or maybe even longer depending on our weather, so I want to protect them in some way from the killing frosts that are about to come in another week or two. Even though carrots like cool temperatures, these are so late in the season, I need to extend my growing season as much as possible. What I've rigged up is what's called a cloche. Some people call it a growing tunnel. Really, it's just a mini greenhouse. And in fact, it almost looks like one the way we have it constructed. I've taken some 9-gauge wire, made ribs out of that, just cutting them in a semicircle and pushing them into the dirt. And then to stabilize it, I've taken some polyester twine and run that along the length of it, one on each side and then one along the top or along the ridge line. So it's almost like purlins in a greenhouse. Then I'm covering it over with plastic on one end, and this is slitted to let out the heat during the day. You must have some ventilation, but that will keep the frost out. And then another material we're using is one you've seen a lot in the garden, and that's Remay, or spun bonded polyester. Both of these materials will hold in enough heat to get good growth on the carrots, but it will let out the hot air so it doesn't warm up too much, and it will screen out the frost. Now if we have a hard killing freeze, say if it got down to 20 degrees, it would not help us much at all. Now if the carrots were mature, they'd be just fine where they sit in the soil, but they're still quite young and have a long ways to go, so I want to protect them as long as I can. Now a little growing tunnel like this, or a cloche as some people call it, can be used for almost any crop that you want to extend the season on. If you're a little late getting in some fall lettuce, for instance, or some radishes, you might want to try this method. I know of some people who have grown clear up until mid-December with this and done just fine, controlling the heat, and letting ventilation, allowing for ventilation, but having enough heat built up during the day that it's held in, and the vegetables have done just beautifully. So this is something you might want to try in your own garden. A variation on using the cable or the 9-gauge wire here would be to use 1/2 inch or 1 inch flexible plastic tubing to make your ribs, and that would work just fine also. One last tip, I've secured these with some lath type material and just stapled the plastic to it. And I've done the same thing on the Remay, so that if I want to take it off to fertilize or thin the crop or whatever, I just toss it off onto the other side and then bring it back in place when I'm done. It works out just really well. This is a system you might want to try in your own garden.